Hello and welcome to episode 147 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. I am the father of the most beautiful beast in the world, Jerry. And we're coming off of a late news strikes kind of week. Yes, that's right. I thought there was one truly slate-altering piece of news to come in at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, and that was, of course, Ezekiel Elliott surprisingly getting scratched. And then there was other news too, all the Dolphin stuff with Devontae Parker and Gesicki and Jakeem Grant all getting ruled out. But let's start with the Tony Pollard stuff. And I know some people's initial reaction was, well, Ezekiel Elliott wasn't in play at 6,100, Adam. Why are we excited about Tony Pollard at 5,200? Well, first of all, it's been very clear that Pollard is more explosive than Zeke. I mean, just not even close. But more importantly, Pollard has been used so much in a pass-catching role. He had 24 targets on just 244 snaps heading into week 15. And most importantly, there was no threat to Pollard in usage. In other words, while Zeke was losing 17 to 20 snaps per game to Pollard, that just wasn't going to happen. Pollard ended up playing on 52 out of 56 snaps in the game. So at 11 a.m. Eastern, I had Kyler Murray and Leonard Fournette in my lineup. I thought the Pollard setup was strong enough to go to Jalen Hurts and Pollard. And the thing about Lenny was, while I thought he was a lock or a near lock for all the early down work, there was some chance at least that he would get benched for mistake. And we know that the Bucs preferred McCoy and or Keyshawn Vaughn in the pass down role because Lenny was healthy scratched out of that role in week 14. So yeah, I thought going to Pollard was definitely right from a floor perspective. And the Pollard Hurts side of that 2v2 ended up netting 72 points versus 59 for the Lenny Kyler side. So big difference. Was happy with the process there and obviously got an outlier result from Jalen Hurts and the late run from Pollard. But still, I think it was right regardless of the result. While we're on this subject of very impactful late news, I want to reiterate how much more valuable late news is for tournaments versus early news. If this Zeke news came out on Friday, I suspect Pollard would have been 25, 30, 35% owned maybe in tournaments. But in the $10 Millie Maker, Pollard was just 12% owned, Fournette 23%. So the point is that late news is more valuable from a leverage perspective. So many people either, A, aren't paying attention to the news at 11:30 a.m., B, can't process it, or C, don't want to mess with the teams that they've already built. Now, all that stuff is especially true at lower stakes. Note that in the $10 on DK, as I said, Pollard was 12%. In the $50 single entry, he was 19%. In the big $100 GPP on DK, he was 24%. In the live final, he was 32%. So as you go up in stakes, you see that more and more people are reacting to late news. And that should be obvious, Just people are more confident making late decisions. People are paying closer attention the higher stakes you go. Other late news thing I was happy about was simply going Bowden, Lynn Bowden Jr. over Michael Gallup. I had Gallup in. I went to Bowden for 100 more on the Parker, Gesicki, Jakeem news. I mean, I know Gallup outscored Bowden slightly, but from a usage and from a role perspective, the Bowden side was almost definitely right. But again, just a reminder that if you're playing tournaments and late news breaks, you're going to get lower ownership than you would have gotten had the news broken 48 hours early. Just something to always remember. Speaking of late news, this is a good time to remind you that the NBA is back. It's so fucking back. We are covering it with the same intensity and thoroughness we cover the NFL, but it's 7 main slates a week. Just so many opportunities. And that's why I thought the price should be way, way, way more than it is. But Drew and Wiggins and Taylor convinced me otherwise. So head to the site, check it out on the NBA tab. Starts tonight. 2-game slate tonight, and then I get 13-game slate on Wednesday. Lot of action. Okay, so I ended up playing, I want to talk about defense for a second. I ended up playing Jaguars defense in cash on Draftkings. Obviously, I didn't really want to. Obviously, I didn't think they would perform well. But I really don't think punting at defense and cash is ever really that bad. And it's because the market is overconfident in its ability to pinpoint D/ST scoring, especially when they're priced up. Like, small sample, of course, but let's look at week 15. The most owned defense on the main slate was the Rams against the Jets. Rams scored 2. Next highest owned was Washington against Seattle. They scored 3. Seattle was the next. They scored 9. New England 4th. They scored 4. Arizona 5th. They scored 8. So yeah, I prefer to find a defense I actually like. One that I think has a chance to play from ahead, has a good pass rush, facing a quarterback who will be dropping back a lot, obviously. I liked Washington. I liked Seattle. I liked Tampa this week. But I didn't think any of them were a slam dunk. So, yeah, I think Jacksonville was okay. Last thing I want to mention in cash was the Derrick Henry stuff. And I know this is crazy, but he scored 28.2 DraftKings points, and that was like his borderline floor in this game against the Lions. I mean, Ryan Tannehill ran in 2 touchdowns. A.J. Brown scored on a 2-yard touchdown. The Titans surprisingly didn't care about getting the big dog closer to records. You know, they gave Darrington Evans 2 fourth quarter series. The game was like, it wasn't out of hand. It was like a 14-point game or a 20-point game. But Evans gets 2 series. He gets 4 carries and 1 target inside the 5-yard line, scored once. So yeah, given all that, Henry had a lot of 40-point games in his range. Really did. I think the Darrington Evans stuff is worth noting, though. Like, if they don't have goals of getting the big dog, the rushing record over the last couple weeks, you know, that hurts a little. Not that I expect garbage time to exist against the Packers this coming week, you know, unlike Jacksonville and Detroit. You know, this is where, when they play the Packers, this is where Henry's lack of pass catching can actually lower his floor. Packers obviously at least a threat to get a big lead some percent of the time. All right. Enough is enough. It's time for everyone's favorite portion of the program. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, got a ton of good ones. Appreciate the questions as always. Going to do 7 today. Friend of the show, doing great work with us, Ryan Bradley. He says, can you talk about year-end tax implications in DFS? Not sure I understand completely. Yeah, a good question. First of all, you know, I'm not a CPA or a financial advisor. You know, I make sex jokes on the internet. So please consult your actual accountant. But yeah, so what I'm about to say applies for any form of gambling, you know, poker, you know, DFS, whatever. And I want to be very clear. This only goes for people who are up more than $600 on the year as the end of the year gets closer. If you're stuck, you know, this does not apply to you. But just think about it rationally. Like, think about it through an example. Let's say you're up 100K on the year in the calendar year 2020 going into December 29th. You owe roughly 30K in taxes on that 100K for a net profit of 70,000. If you put 10K in play on December 29th and lose it all, you're now up 90,000 on the year, but you only owe 27 in taxes for a net profit of 63,000. So you lost, quote unquote, lost that 10K, but you really only lost 7K net once you factor in taxes. I hope that makes sense. I mean, it should be really simple to think about. I think there's a misconception out there that there's, you know, like free money to be had at the end of the year where we all should be, you know, blasting off all of our profits. That's just not the case. That's taking it too far. You're essentially, what's happening is you're essentially getting a little rebate on any losses you have, but you're still losing money. Question 2 from Eric. He says, I've lived in Philadelphia for 8 years now, and I've never seen so many for sale signs posted. Is it a good time to buy low or hold off and hope the exodus continues? Signed, Real Estate Fish. Yeah, interesting timing for this question, Eric. I am also a real estate fish, and I will be selling my house in Philadelphia this spring. From what I can tell, this is the worst possible time in the last decade to sell. I mean, the Philadelphia real estate market has just been absolutely on fire until maybe, you know, until the pandemic, basically. And I think, you know, almost solely due to the pandemic, this has turned into the worst possible time to be selling a house. I think the appeal of the city, you know, like living downtown, like where we live now, there's so much to do. There's so many restaurants, bars, museums, parks, etc. Well, like all that's closed, and that's like the biggest appeal of living in the city. It's all closed. But maybe more impactful to the city real estate is I think people want space because they now realize they can work from home. They may be working from home more going forward, even after the pandemic. So, you know, they want a home office. They want a big home office. They want a big yard. They want a big basement for the kids, whatever. I'm not sure they want the smaller city living anymore. But I don't know, man. I'm just speculating. I hope I'm wrong. My guess is that if you want to buy, you know, even or rent, if you want to buy or rent in a city long term, now is the best possible time to do it. Like right now as we speak, because eventually all these restaurants and bars and the sex and everything, it's going to open again. You know, all the reasons we love the city. I mean, we've lived in the city for 16 years. If it wasn't for the kids and their school situation and wanting more space, I mean, there's just no shot that we'd leave. Love being in the city. I love knowing that if I happen to drop my toothbrush in the toilet at 3 a.m., I can walk to the little store a half a block away and get a new one. There's something comforting about that to me. But yeah, good luck on the house hunt, Eric. Question 3 from Kinseth. He says, is Establish the Run yours, Evan's, Mike, Andrew, Drew's day jobs? If not, what does everyone do for day jobs? Yeah, man, I know it's hard to believe, but this is it, man. This is the day job. We play fantasy. We put all our hearts and soul into the site. We write sex jokes. That's it. I mean, crazy, right? For me personally, incredibly lucky to have this stuff as a job. I'm 38 now. I've never had a real job or what the stiffs would consider, or my parents' generation would consider a real job. So, I just really appreciate everyone listening to this. I mean, this absurd life that I have is only because of you guys. I really do. I appreciate all of you. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to your families. Question 4 from Mans. He says, how much would you need to stream on OnlyFans in a Speedo for 4 hours about your want plays of the week? So I actually didn't know what OnlyFans is. I had to look it up. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, how is this new? How is this a novel idea? X person makes content, Y customer is willing to pay for it, Z company hosts it for a cut of the profits. Seems so simple. I don't understand how this is a new thing. Of course, in this case, in the case of OnlyFans, from what I can tell, it appears to be X person makes porn, Y pervert pays for it, Z company becomes the butt of jokes, but also from what I was reading, OnlyFans is valued at close to $1 billion. I mean, hashtag how rich. While I was reading about OnlyFans, I see this story that Bella Thorne went on to OnlyFans for a day, promised nudes, and made a couple million, but only did lingerie pics. And so the dudes who paid had a meltdown, charged back their purchases. Just so absurd. But yeah, okay. Back to the question from Mans. So on the Speedo thing, when I was a kid, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, probably, my parents made me join the swim team at our neighborhood pool. And I mean, I absolutely hated it. I lasted 2 weeks. I mean, first of all, I'm up at 6:30 in the morning wearing nothing but a Speedo, jumping into a freezing cold pool. I mean, that's not normal. I just hated it. And wearing the Speedo was so awful. So the price is going to be high here. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to wear a Speedo. The other thing about swimming was I never really learned how to dive. I kind of still can't dive. So I would just kind of jump into the pool feet first or belly flop in and then start swimming. That kind of puts you in a hole when you're in a race. But all that said, I'm always down to interact with the fans. I actually like doing the Periscope things where I just kind of sit around and hang out and people ask questions and whatever. I think that's kind of fun. That's no problem, obviously. So basically what Mans is asking is how much to sell my body in a Speedo. And I think I'm going to keep it low. I'll say 20K. I mean, if you can get 20K together, I'll go on OnlyFans in a Speedo. Seems fun. Seems reasonable. Question 5 from Jacob says, would it be sharp to study the impact that certain referee crews have on games? I saw a video of McAfee talking about how players can tell how a game is going to go based on the refs they have, whether it'll be high or low scoring. Yeah, so I think plenty of people are doing this. I know there are plenty of betting content sites that do it. You didn't used to know who the refs would be before a game. But ever since the Tim Donaghy scandal, in the interest of transparency, the NBA, and I think the NFL, but definitely the NBA, releases the refs, who the refs will be before the game. So yeah, there's data out there on all of them. A quick Google search, and I found that John Hussey games, the NFL referee, they go under 62% of the time. I mean, that's really significant. But that looks like an outlier. Most refs are around 52, 53, 54% one way or the other, overs or unders, aka within the margin of small sample size error. It's an interesting thought, though, and one that I suspect the biggest NFL bettors in the world have looked at and built into their models, at least to some degree. Question 6 from Benny. He says, when can you call yourself a quote-unquote DFS pro? Does it have to do with the amount of money you have in action each week? Yeah, I've railed on this before, but I still remain confused by this whole, DFS pro thing people get so hung up on. First of all, to answer the question, I would define DFS Pro exclusively by if they make 100% or, at least 90% of their income from playing DFS, period. Nothing to do with how much money you have in play or how famous you are, how many followers you have, or how many screenshots you have. Is playing DFS what you do for a living? I don't think that's too controversial or complicated. The thing that drives me insane is when people are like, oh my God, this guy's a pro. What do I do? Like, there's no barrier to entry to playing DFS at a high level. It's not like being a professional football player, professional tennis player, where you have to be one of the top 0.00001% athletes in the entire world and have the exact right size to make it. The people who bitch about DFS pros, like, I don't really get it. I mean, believe me, there's nothing special. There's no secret club or formula. People are, developing some of their own sims or software or using projections in different ways, but it's just being smart and working hard. There's no barrier to anybody else doing so. So, yeah, hope that helps. All right, question 7, last question we're going to do today comes from Ben. He says, where is the appropriate location to store a toilet brush? My wife scrubs the toilet bowl and returns the brush to a hook in the hall closet where other cleaning supplies are kept. Occasionally, I will make contact with the disgusting bristles when removing items from the closet. Yeah, great question. One that I've actually thought about a lot. The sick part is that people don't use the toilet brush when the bowl is clean, right? Like, they bust out the toilet brush when something explosive happens in there and it can't be rectified by the normal water that circles the bowl. The remnants are too much. We got to use the brush. But then what? What do you do with it? I'd say most people have like a toilet brush holder that lives next to the toilet. And I don't think that's great, but that's what we have. It's okay. But the hook in the closet, I mean, that's one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard. I mean, you're essentially putting fecal matter into a closet where, as you said, you could touch it, it could smell, the smell could infect other things in the closet. So I actually think that this toilet brush in the closet thing you're describing, Ben, could be grounds for divorce. I mean, I'm not trying to be a homewrecker here, but I think you at least need to consider it. It just shows such poor judgment on the part of your wife. All right, that is going to do it for today's solo pod. Be sure to head to the site to check out NBA. The season starts tonight. Really is a fun game, NBA DFS. It is a great sweat. We are ready to rock. Details on the NBA tab. Also, producer Luke has been crushing it on the NBA YouTube channel. Gallagher is doing something called 3-Ball, just a short video to get you caught up on what you need to know in the NBA each and every day. That's free on YouTube. Check it out there. So, for producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.